Hey guys, it's Aiden. I just wanted to make this video today hot off the announcement of this new synth, Vital by Matt Tytel. Basically, if you guys haven't seen it, it's this really sick wavetable synthesizer. Now, if you're not sure what a wavetable synthesizer is, basically think Serum, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The reason I'm reviewing this synth is because it's basically what a lot of people are referring to as a Serum killer, or the best competitor that Serum's had yet in this kind of vein of synthesizers. And as you just heard in the intro there, it's capable of some insane sounds. So instead of just doing a traditional review of the synthesizer, I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to see how it actually stacks up side by side when we compare it with Serum. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. So let's dive straight in. Okay, so as you can see, I've got them both side by side here. Now, the first thing I want to cover is the sound quality of the synths. Now, there's not a whole lot to mention here apart from that both synths have incredible sound quality. They're both very low noise floor synthesizers, meaning what you see or what you're supposed to hear is what you get. You're seeing this saw wave, and you're getting that saw wave, right? Which is great. It means that we can rely on the accuracy of what we're seeing. One other quick mention I will say is I feel like the envelopes, especially the release envelope in Vital, is slightly more natural. By default, it is set a bit lower, but if we bring it up to 50 milliseconds, oh, actually it's 15, sorry. I've always felt like Serum's release envelope has had an issue with it being too snappy. I feel like Vital's is slightly smoother, but that might just be a bias. I'm not sure if that's an actual thing or not. First thing we'll get into now, though, is the layout of the synthesizer in general. So as you can see side by side here, they have very similar sections. However, the layout is slightly different and the graphic and GUI in general is slightly different. So as you can see here, we have everything on the one page, kind of this main voice page it's what it's called in Vital. We've got the OSC page in Serum. Very similar, they show all of your envelopes, all of your main filters, LFOs, envelopes. Serum's got it more vertically stacked, whereas Vital here has it more horizontally stacked. You've also got what I would believe would be a bit more of a cleaner layout in Vital. I would say it looks a bit nicer. The components are like super, I don't know, like what do you call it, vector graphics, I think. So they look super smooth no matter how much you scale it, whereas Serum's components are not bad, they just don't have that super clean look, which I prefer the look of Vital, to be honest, in comparison. I feel like Serum's kind of got that more, sci-fi look, whereas this has kind of got that to a degree, but it's like, more kind of that flat design, which I really like. The other thing is with Serum, though, that being said, you still have skins, so I can change it to something that does look nicer for me. I like this skin. This is the Echo Soundworks one, I believe, and it looks really nice, whereas I don't think Vital has skins yet. Whether they're planning on doing that, I'm not sure, and if I'm wrong, correct me, please. The only other thing as well is that Serum's GUI is more resizable, so if I bring up Serum here and we drag this, you can see here, it's very easy for me to resize it, and I can bring it back down here so we can have it where it was. Whereas Vital, you kind of have to go with what you're given in these percentage amounts. Even if you have the ability to drag it in the corner down here, you have to actually drag it a certain amount and it snaps to one of these presets amount. It's not modular, which is interesting considering the design of it. But anyway, that's a bit about the design. Now I'll jump into probably one of the main features you guys want to hear about, which is the oscillators. Now, the biggest thing I love about Vital is that it has 3 oscillators instead of 2. Now, I don't actually use 3 oscillators that often, but it is nice to have the ability, especially when doing things like FM, or you're wanting to stack up things slightly differently or do more manual detuning of each specific oscillator. It's great. Serum kind of has this with the sub-oscillator, but I think Matt Tytel's probably just thought, you know what, I'd like a synth that has 3 oscillators and it can be a sub-oscillator. A sub-oscillator is essentially a lower functionality version of the same thing. The cool thing is, though, that a lot of the features of these oscillators are quite similar, but there's a lot of other cool things in Vital that I think make a lot of difference, which is sick. Namely, first of all, the routing. You can choose specifically where the routing goes. You can actually have direct out as an option for all 3 oscillators, etc. And I think that gives you a lot of flexibility. The one thing that Serum's always had as a problem is its routing is very set in stone. You can't do a whole lot of customization. However, the way Vital has done it, I really like. I think it's simple and clean, yet complicated where it needs to be. So you've got the options to send it to filters, effects, or direct out there. Beyond like the normal wavetables, being able to switch, which I think there's a lot of similar wavetables, depending on what you do. If I just load up here. You know, you've got all these different options and you've got the wavetable slider on the side here. Depending on what you choose, we obviously get different options. Functions very similarly to how Serum's one does, except in Vital, you've got these two other knobs here, which are two type of essentially warp knobs. One's called a spectrum morph and one's called a wave morph, I think it's called. Basically, you have two sets of options with these really useful and crazy sounding warping functions where you can, like what the heck. And then you've got these wave morph, which when I add a one like, let's say bend, not only can I control it with this wave morph, but I've also got a phase. I can adjust the distortion of the phase as well with this new slider that appears underneath the synth. Great for basses and great for just adding subtle movements, which is really cool. And this applies with pretty much all of these modes in different ways. Except the FM ones, of course, that's a kind of separate thing. And you got obviously these aren't affected by that slider. But that's great. You've also got the standard phase unison controls. You can add more voices, similar to how you can in Serum. But you've got the control here with the amount of detune. The blend this time is actually in the advanced settings, which is different. And you've got this new power function, which basically splits the voices out more to the sides rather than in the center. So if you want a super detuned effect, you can kind of bring the power down, or if you want more of a tighter sound, you can bring it towards the center, which is cool. And then you got the random and you got the starting phase as well, which is very similar to the phase and range knobs in Serum here. But that's pretty much the oscillators. You've obviously got the wavetable editor. Wavetable editor is a lot cleaner. You can scroll through all the different ones here. And one thing that I really love about Vital is these keyframes you can add for different things. So you can actually set a different source along this, scroller here for all the different frames. So we can double click here. We can make a new wave essentially, which is sick. And I could draw this in, and then now that'll be a new point at which it morphs along, right? Which is so cool. I really like that. And then you've got all these abilities to add more sources. You can add more modifiers as well, like the wave warp. You can do frequency filter, phase shift. Just really fun stuff. Now, one thing I really like, let me just bring that up there. Cool sound. You've got two filters, as you would have noticed. Now, each of these oscillators can be routed to either of the filters or both at the same time. I'm just going to route it to the first one for now because I just want to show you. You can also control the routing down here. So I can, if you notice, I click oscillator 2 down here. It will select the 1 and 2 option, basically adding filter 1 into this oscillator signal path. So you have multiple ways of controlling the same thing, which is nice if you prefer that. All of the filters in Vital, as opposed to Serum, where Serum splits low pass, band pass, high pass into different types, which creates a lot of different types of the same thing. Vital's just decided to make all these blend/morphing filters, so you can blend between a high pass, band pass, or low pass for different types with different slopes. That's got a notch blend. This has got a notch spread, which is kind of cool. Drive. There's also a bunch of different filters as well. There's dirty, ladder, digital, diode. These are all basically similar things, but just with slightly different characteristics to them. You got some cool filters as well, which is nice. Then you've got some combs and phases as well, which very similar to the combs and phases in this flanges option here in Serum. Once again, it kind of combines a lot of them into the same thing, and you can morph it at the top there. From a band pass to a low pass, add more resonance. The only thing I really am a bit frustrated at is that some of the more miscellaneous special types of filters here that Serum has are just a lot of fun and add some extra like unpredictability, whereas Vital doesn't really have any of those kind of more special filter types yet. It's kind of just like the more basic ones, which is fine. Honestly, a lot of the time that's fine, and to be honest, some of the ones like the reverb filter in Serum are overused, but it would be nice to have some more interesting filter types in here. But I guess the benefit is you can combine multiple different ones anyway. So we could say the filter 1 input goes into filter 2, and then we could have 1 going into 2. And you can do all sorts of cool stuff like that, which is really fun. This is obviously in combination with the filter in the effects as well, which we will get into soon. So some really sick stuff there. You've obviously got key tracking, your dry wet mix knob, your resonance, etc. So you've got all of these really cool controls here, which I really like. Let's jump into the effects real quick. We've got a very similar stack of effects here. One thing that Vital has done is basically combine the hyper and chorus into one device. It is probably closer to what I would say, probably say more of a hyper type effect, but it does definitely have a chorus kind of sound to it. So it's kind of halfway. You can choose the amount of voices, which is definitely where I would say it's closer to hyper. You don't really have this same concept. You've just got these moving delays. This gives it a really thick kind of chorus sound as opposed to a more dirty chorus sound. You've got the amount of delay from the original dry signal for both 2 of these. So I think 6 per delay, I think is how it works. The depth of how much they move. The frequency of how fast they move. You can sync that to your seconds, which is like hertz, or you can sync it to your tempo, which is cool. Then you can control the wet signals frequency range, which is cool, and then feedback back into it. It's kind of very similar, but it just combines those into the same thing, which is kind of cool. Compress is very similar. You've got a multi-band, a single band, as well as these new low and high band modes, which just basically give you a few different options. You've got gain controls for the 3 bands. You've got more flexibility with the ratio and thresholds on this visual display as well as attack and release. So very similar overall, just with a few extra features. Delay is very similar. I'm not really going to go into that. Distortion's kind of a bit of a letdown, to be honest, because of the lack of distortion types in comparison to Serum. That being said, they do have the best kind of ones in here. And if you were wanting to do extra distortion, you'd just be able to use a third-party plugin. EQ is good because it's more visual. You have the ability to change the bands, and you've also got 3 bands as opposed to 2, which is sick. You can also just use them as a shelf instead, and you just got a nicer display, which I really like. You've also got the extra filter, which is a fully functioning filter, by the way, as opposed to Serum's one, where when you add it in, it's just kind of you select it from the menu, but you don't have this same visual as in Serum's one here, which is kind of annoying. Flanger and phaser are very similar to normal. I'm not really going to go in those as well. Just know that you've also got these visual displays, which is really sick, and you can actually control the things on the visual display, which is what I love, to be honest. So, and then you've got reverb lastly, which is basically just a 1 reverb type as opposed to Serum's 2 reverb types for both the plate and hall, but you have a lot more options with how you can control the signal. You can do a pre, low, and high cut to kind of shape the sound of the reverb, change the diffusion amount. You can change the amount of chorusing in the reverb, the size of the field, the delay before it plays, the mix, dry, wet, length of the delay. So you got a lot of controls here. It basically gives you 1 type of reverb algorithm, but there's a lot you can do with it, which is probably nice for most use cases, to be honest. One thing I will mention that I really like that Vital has done is actually just made it so that when you switch these off here, you switch them off and they go away. Whereas in Serum, you have to switch it off here, but also, if you want to hide it, you have to press them off over here. I like how they've just got all of the options there on the side and you just turn them on and off as you want them. Like, it's really good. Let's quickly jump into the modulation options as well as the matrix. So we've got the envelopes. Once again, envelope 1, same thing in Serum here, is the main envelope for the ADSR of your whole synth, which is great. It's good to have that option by default because it would just be annoying to have to map that manually every single time. You've also got very similar options with the addition of this nice delay at the beginning of the envelope here, which basically adds a bit of time before the envelope is triggered if you are into that. You've got otherwise very similar ADSR controls, very similar way of zooming into the envelopes. You can obviously control it on here, change the curves, move stuff around as you like, and you can see the amount of seconds or milliseconds along the background there, which is really cool. I quite like it. I believe you can also drag, you can drag modulators to the points along here. So like, and then when you do add it, you can see the original position of the envelope versus where it's being modulated to. Just going to disconnect that for now. Obviously got 2 of those. When you start to add a third one, a fourth one will appear, which is always helpful when you run out of modulators. You've also got LFOs. Now, this is very similar to Serum. It's a very similar layout. You've got, by default, 4, which can all be mapped to various different parameters. You've got different modes. You've got a lot more different types of modes as well, which you've got trigger, sync, envelope, sustain envelope, loop point, and loop hold. To be honest, I haven't played with all of these yet, but basically they are combining a variety of different things and different settings here in Serum into different one-off types, which just does simplify things as well. You might not be able to have as many, options in terms of the exact behavior of the LFO, but to be honest, for most use cases, you'd probably be fine. You can also draw in everything, double clicking as well. You can adjust the curves in this curves mode, which is cool. I think it just basically must like turn it into like a smoother curve, which is pretty cool. Obviously, you got a bunch of preset options here. You've got a smoothing out, so that kind of smooths out the response of these jagged edges, a delay, and you've also got this cool stereo knob where the left and right will be slightly offset so that whatever it's being modulated to will give some sort of stereo effect, which is cool. You've also got this cool paintbrush if you want to do steppers or like whatever. You can do this kind of stuff, choose the grid. Really fun just to be able to do that as well, use them as steppers. Once again, you got 4. I'm pretty sure when you add more, you get a 5th one. Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. You also got frequency. Now, one thing I love here is that you can change the option of the frequency of this LFO to the key track. This is great if you're wanting to like get some interesting textures out of sounds, because basically it's going to be as fast as the note you're playing is. We're going to add it to the cutoff here. Really fun textures there, which I love. You can also choose, your normal tempo. Seconds is kind of the universal replacement for hertz. A lot of the stuff that's free flowing in Serum is done in hertz, but seconds is essentially the same kind of thing. So that's great. You've also got these 2 random oscillators, which are basically replacement for Serum's chaos oscillators found in this global section, except once again, you've got a lot more options for style and stuff like that. You can choose your rate as normal. You can sync it to the BPM as well as make it stereo. But apart from that, you've got different options. If I put this on like the formant, really cool. But this one's kind of like a wavy option. This is more of a staggered step. You've also got a side interpolate, which is more random wavy. Then you've got Lorenz attractor, which is just I think it kind of goes either way and kind of stays there for a bit on a random basis. So that's kind of cool. Beyond those two, you've also got a bunch of your standard kind of note, velocity, just a general random each time you press a new note. You got a stereo modulator, which, yeah, slide pressure. Basically, there's so many things you can modulate to different parameters, which is really cool. Gives you so many modulation options, especially with the MPE capability. That's really helpful. Obviously, Serum also has the MPE capability, but just obviously the features in Vital allow for more flexibility there, which is really, really cool. Lastly, you've got your 4 macros, which are pretty standard. I'll get into another cool feature with the Matrix in a second. You've got your pitch wheel and your mod wheel. Yeah, and then one thing you can do in the Matrix, now this is how it differs a lot to Serum, is that everything in Serum, you have a source and destination with the option of an auxiliary source. In Vital, an auxiliary source simply appears as a new source modulating a new destination, which I really like. I think it cleans things up a lot. It makes you can see what you're modulating a lot clearly. And you've also got these mod remapping options here. Now, what this does is it allows you to, if I just do that here, didn't mean to press the X, you can actually control manually the relationship of the modulation with its own curves, meaning when I move the knob, it's not just going to go up to down, or down to up rather, but it's going to go up and then down and then up and down and up and down. That's going to happen in terms of the random knob. So really crazy stuff there, which I really like. You've obviously got a lot of similar controls to the LFO controls there, but it's a really fun thing. I'm not going to go super in depth with it now because it's just so in depth, but it's really fun to play with. You've also got more destinations. I just like how you can see everything a lot clearly here. You can obviously also have more sources as well. You can modulate from things like the LFO. You can modulate things like random. You can do the mod wheel, the note, the aftertouch. And you can modulate destinations so that then sources actually become destinations too. For example, I can modulate the LFO as well as a destination, which is something you couldn't really easily do in Serum. You only had the option of the rate, whereas here you can modulate a lot more things, which is cool. You've also got this cool stereo button you can press on each of the modulation controls, so that it kind of creates a nice stereo effect, and it modulates it different for the left and right, which kind of adds, if you're wanting to add stereo image in an interesting way, this is a great way to achieve it. So, and obviously you can control the amount here and stuff like that, all in the one page, very similar to the amount here in the Matrix and Serum. Cool, so there's a few other last minute features I'm just going to quickly go over before we wrap this up, just so you have a good understanding of how these synths differ. Obviously, voicing section down the bottom here is very similar. You got a glide, portamento. You can make it mono by going to one voice. Add legato, glide. That's very standard there. Very similar to how it functions in the voicing section in Serum. The one cool thing though, if you notice up in the top right here, you've got a visualizer of the actual waveform as you make it. So if I move stuff, you can see how that changes, which is really cool. And it just really gives you this awesome feedback as you're making sounds. As well as in the advanced section, you also have a frequency response on a spectrum analyzer here, which is incredible just to be able to see what you're doing. It doesn't mean you have to load up an external EQ or spectrum analyzer to see what you're doing. It's great. You've also got your standard unison advanced controls here. You can make everything mono as well in terms of the unison. Instead of spreading just the pitch, it spreads only the pitch and not the stereo width as well, which kind of gives this thick sound, but only in the mono version. So that's cool. On that note, you can actually make the whole synth mono by bringing this spread knob down to 0, which is cool. Really sick there. Yeah, and you've obviously got different types of unison here. Not great for this sound, but great to have that option. And I love this feature where you can spread the table position, the spectral spread, and the distortion of the phase beyond between the three or however many unison voices you've got. And that is basically it. You've got your oversampling options here, which is great. You've got your high CPU and ultra CPU, which is awesome. You can enable MPE, load in tuning files, etc. That is the general gist of everything you need to know about Vital in comparison to Serum. There's obviously a lot of similarities, and while Vital might not fully reinvent the wheel, it definitely has taken the concept of Serum into a new realm, and it's finally something that can compete with it, especially considering, based on what I'm going to say now, which is the price is free for the basic version of Vital. Now, I say basic version, it's a fully featured version, meaning you can use everything. The only one thing you can't use is if I right-click on the oscillators, you've got this text to wavetable feature, which basically, if I load that up there, I'm just going to turn off all of the things here as well so we can actually hear what's going on. Which basically, as you can hear, it allows you to like make these vocal word sounds. That's a limited feature. You can only do that, I think, 3 times or 5 times a day or something on the free version, but the full paid version allows you to do that. I'll leave all the pricing in the description. But in comparison to something like Serum, which costs over $100, I think nearly $200 US if I'm not mistaken, it's a serious competitor. So it has a lot of things which Vital does as good, and in some cases, if not better. While it is missing a few features, namely the distortion options, some of the filter options, it definitely competes on a really good level. So I hope this has given you a great idea of how the two synths stack up. If you have any questions or if I rushed over anything too much, just let me know in the comments and I'll explain it, or maybe there'll be future videos. If you liked this Vital and Serum comparison, make sure to subscribe to our EDM Prod YouTube channel for more content from the team. Like it and share it with someone who you think would like this comparison. And yeah, guys, make sure to go also check out our free downloads page in the description to our website if you want some free content, some free PDFs and sample packs, etc. We've always got stuff for you guys. Great. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.